Hi everyone. So in this video, we'll talk about strings. Uh, so let's start with, I think last, so I'll just go ahead and remove everything from here. So let's start with creating a string variable. So we'll say string name equals to, let's say, Saurabh. Okay. So this is how you initialize a string variable. So now if you have to define empty string, right? So there are multiple ways that we can define an empty string. So I can say string let's say is a for now equals to, and I can have double quotes, right? So this is an example of an empty string. But usually, right, in C sharp, if you want to initialize an empty string, so we can use String.Empty. So this is usually how we define an empty string in C sharp. And finally, we can also create a string variable and initialize it with a null value, right? So there's a difference in these three variables here. So the first variable, so we have declared a variable called as name and initialize it with a value of Saurabh. The second one is a string variable a, uh, right? So it has memory allocated for this variable, but there is no actual value stored in that memory location. But the third one, it's actually that we have not even defined any memory allocation for this variable. Yeah. So this is how we initialize strings. So one interesting thing about strings is that strings are immutable. So what do I mean when I say immutable? So for example, if we have created this string name equals to Saurabh, let's say I have to attach my last name also to this thing. So I can say name equals to name plus, let's say, my second name, right? So now so this is totally fine to do it in C sharp, and what I can also try to do is, let's say, console.writeLine, just back on the console, and let's run this application. So I have to do a console. Five. Okay, so I can see my first name and last name here on console. So now the problem here, although this is totally valid C sharp syntax, now because strings are immutable in C sharp, what happens is whenever you make any updates to the string variable, a new memory is allocated for that variable. Okay, so if you are doing multiple operations on strings, it's recommended that you don't use strings directly in C sharp, right? Instead, what you can do is use something called as StringBuilder, right? As the name suggests, right? If you have read computer science, if you know about builder pattern, this is the same. It uses a builder pattern behind the scenes. So I can say StringBuilder, let's say name equals to new StringBuilder. So I can initialize this with an initial name. So I can say Saurabh, and then I can say sp name dot append. So there are multiple methods here that you can use to make updates on this StringBuilder variable, right? So I can say now dot append, say end, and now if I want to do a console dot write line, I can directly do it on name, and I can say toString, right? So what you have to keep in mind is if you're working with string variables, and if you're making multiple updates, then it's always better to use StringBuilder to avoid multiple memory allocation whenever you make a change. Okay, so this was all about string builders. So let's also see. Let's Okay, so let's say I have two string variables, right? Let's call this as first name. So I'll just rename this. Copy this. have like two variables. So first name, I'll call it as last name. Okay. And now if I have to, so if I have multiple variables and I want to format string in a certain manner, right? So we have methods such as, no, I can use something called as string.format. We are using two variables, let's say is, so whatever variables that you want to put, you have to use this curly braces and 0, 1 notation. Is this name, comma, last name. So string dot, this would just format. If I want to put it on console, then I can say console dot. So I'll just put a breakpoint here so that I just want to see the output till this point. Okay, so I'll start and put a breakpoint. We'll talk about debugging later. But if you see here, my first name is Saurabh and last name is Zen, right? So this is how you format strings in C#. You can make use of string.format function. Okay, so let's talk about some of the string methods that we have. So now that we have first name and last name, let's so this is how we put comments in C#. This is a single line comment. We'll also talk about comments later in the videos. So let's say string. Let's start with, so we have a string here. And what I'll do is I'll say first name. So I want a substring of first name. And if I put a round bracket here, right, if you see in IntelliSense, it says, so if you can see my cursor here, it basically means that this method has two overloads. So the first overload takes like one argument, which is the start index, and the second overload takes two arguments, which is start index and length, right? So I want a substring which starts from 0th index, and let's say I want length 3. Okay, so ideally this actually would return me would return a string. So what I'll do is I'll say console dot write line. So this one, what it should put on the console is it should start from 0. So this is 0, 0th index, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, right? So length we have given 3, so it will take 1, 2, 3. So I should see SAU on the screen. So I'll put a, let's put a breakpoint here. So when I put a breakpoint here, it would just stop here so that the program would just execute till this point, right? That's what we want. So it has come here. So we'll see console. If you see console, it has SAU on no, type on the screen. So this is what it the substring method does. If you want to get a substring of a particular string, so there are like two overloads that you have. One is if you can just give the start index. In that case, it would just run through the end of the string. And if you want a specific length as well, then you can provide it as a second parameter to your method. Okay, so this is all about substring. So now the other method, let's see another method. What we can also do is we can do something called as replace. So I can say first name dot replace. Now here the replace is with the character, right? So in characters we have to let's say, so A we have to replace by, let's say for now, let's say C. Okay, so what this should do is replace all occurrences of A in this first name with C. All right, and characters, right? So that's the difference. If you see a string literal, it's used no, we have to keep the string literal inside double quotes, and the char literal has to come inside a single quote. So that's how the compiler makes the difference that this is a no string or a character. Now I can say console.writeLine. Right. So let's see what this outputs. Let's go here. Yeah, so there were like 2 occurrences of A, and it has replaced both of them with C. Right? So this is how the replace method works. So let's see one more method. So this method is called IndexOf. So what I want is if I'm interested in knowing that a particular character or a string exists in this particular string or not, right? In that case, I can use something called as IndexOf. So I can use something called as IndexOf. So again, there are a lot of overloads here. If you see that this is like 1 of 9. So there are like 9 overloads. So you can pick and choose like what exact method you want, overload that you want from IndexOf. So in this case, what I'll do is simply say that, let's say I want the index of h in this string. So if you see here, if you hover over this, you should see like what's the return type, right? Because we are looking for an index, the return type is actually an integer. So this also I can put it on the console. So I'll say console.writeLine. In this case, it would give me the index of h, right? And as I told you, so index of h in this case, so let's just put it, just show you quickly if you're not aware about this, right? So the first one, so index always starts with 0. So 1, 2, 3. So this would be 4, 5, 6, right? So we should probably get 6 here in this case. So let's run this. Yeah, so the index of h in this particular string is 6. All right, so these were like few methods that we can use to make for operating upon string variables in C#. So null strings and empty strings we have already seen, and we use StringBuilder for if we are doing multiple operations on string, we should always be using StringBuilder, right? So because to avoid multiple memory allocation whenever we are making any changes on a string literal. Okay. So this was all about strings. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.